Here we are again, another week of fasting, and here I'm at Mark's Headroom, right? I just taped my first comedy sketch, Headroom Tonight. I'll try to turn off the comedy now, like it was really pouring out earlier. But anyway, the uh, the writing is so important for comedy. I think you have to have an instrument that can deliver it. But anyway, here I am. I'm feeling awkward now. The the uh, the work that I did on Transcendent this week was investigating about humor and what people might be finding funny today. Because when I started challenging myself to do something a bit new and uncomfortable, I went back and I remembered what my acting coach Cliff Osmond told me years ago, that I needed to go to San Francisco and do stand-up comedy. And for whatever reason, I didn't do that. And so here I am now, 30, 32 years later, after he told me that, um, exploring it. Anyway, I have found it to be an interesting dive as I've studied comedy. And one of the things, if you want to tune into Transcendent, I haven't put this one up on Substack or on YouTube yet, but I intend to. Um, I was kind of surprised at how I kind of knew this, but I never realized how powerful humor is as a identifier of someone's personality and maybe some traits. I was really surprised by the research that I did, how much TikTok and Facebook and politicians and advertisers and the people that are selling influence, like their platform, like Google, Facebook, have studied all of the behaviors that they've captured from people using their online platforms. And it turns out that humor is something that's used by the government as well as advertisers and politicians to profile people and to predict behavior. And it's a pretty good predictor because people, when they laugh or they choose things online, likes and or laugh or share things, those are often, kind of like very insightful and not always well guarded. And so there's something interesting about the using humor to look into your own psyche or psychology or how you're feeling and how you're relating to others. And what you find funny is very indicative of kind of where you're at. And there's a lot of associations with aggressive behavior and intelligence and emotional maturity in by some of the studies that have been done around humor. So I found that fascinating. But for me, I think the reason I wanted to to dive into humor was to challenge myself to do something that I've been told more than once would be a good thing for me to do. Whether someone felt like I would actually land a role or a gig as a comedian, or whether they thought it was a developmental thing, or whether it was a you know, um, kind of a self-informing process. Because I think, just like acting, comedy is a relationship with the collective. If you're doing it live in front of an audience, you're, of course, in a lot of these clubs, you're doing it in front of people that are drinking. So um, that changes the dynamic quite a bit. And I guess if you're a theater actor, you're feeling I do know that because I have done some theater. I think you are acting off of kind of the vibe that you pick up from the audience. And in some cases, some actors are built that way. Some, I guess, are, totally in their own world and they're doing their song and dance regardless of what's going on in front of them. But I'm really trying to open myself and be tuned in to what's going on around me. So anyway, I put together an interesting monologue and shot it myself here in my studio, and try not to. Hopefully, I can just run right through it without having to do any edits. I think I may lay in some music or something kind of catchy to put a little bit different spin from everything else that I put out. Wouldn't it be weird for someone to mistake one of my healing videos on Transcendent for comedy or vice versa? But anyway, it'd be a real gift to realize that I could put some messages together, entertain, make people or sustain their attention because they were finding something kind of touching them in a way that they hadn't really expected, which I think is kind of the surprise of comedy is when uh, when there's something that really grips you and it kind of slips through some defense mechanism that you may have, and you find yourself laughing and you feel some relief and tension from the whatever is going on in your life and in the world. Interesting turn today. I heard that Trump or the Supreme Court had ruled the tariffs were not constitutional. So it's going to be an interesting time to see how that money gets back in your pocket, if, but that's another story. I had some interesting feedback, not from the Transcendent or the Mark's Headroom group, but I took a cut from Mark's Headroom last week and put it on my Future Wise Energy site, and just like a minute clip. And it was about the spiritual bank concept, or the idea of, if we could measure and somehow trade and store based on real value. And I'm talking about values more like, things that we might, behaviors that we might have respect for. And if we could find a way to measure those characteristics and store them and maybe trade them, would that be interesting? It kind of led me into an interesting interesting ideas about how we use financial products to, help people overcome their fears. Because if they're insured and something bad happens, then they feel like they're going to be able to maintain the plan or the story that they were living without an interruption. So what if you could somehow align a financial product or something that we could honor and value and see in each other that would have immediate value, and it wouldn't just be some kind of superficial, well, did you go to church today? Or did you memorize that Bible verse? Or someone that, may have, taken a vacation and helped someone in Haiti that was in need. But maybe if you just walked outside and went over and asked a neighbor if, what was going on, and connected with them and found out that, they had a light that was out and they couldn't change it. And maybe you changed it for them and had to go to the store and do it. Use some of your own energy and life to pitch in, rather than signing up and making sure everyone noticed for the volunteer work. Not being critical, just making an observation. But isn't it so funny how we've got all this technology that's really helped us connect with each other more? And look at what's happened. Looking at how we have connected. And then we've got all these, the videos and the films and the records, the transparency, the media, and how all the technology is really showing us things that we couldn't even imagine 100 years ago. Maybe we imagined, but we just said, please don't make it so. And it is. So we're faced with a lot of new information these days, and we're really our organizations, and I think government in particular, and corporations, institutions are all struggling to keep up. I keep looking around, trying to find someone that's using AI and it's really making a difference in their life. And I don't have a lot of people telling me those stories. That's kind of interesting. But wouldn't it be cool if we could develop the technology and the ability to measure the sincerity and what's in someone's heart, what your motive is, what's really going on? But kind of wouldn't that take the fun out of living and of taking responsibility for your life? Because if you just like walked up to maybe a camera that had this special sensor built into it and it looked into your eyes and it said, oh no. Well, and then you say, oh man, it's over. What do I do now? And you're spending the rest of your life trying not to deal with that truth that you were told. Well, that creates an interesting screenplay. I don't know if I'm really up for writing that one today, but here we are. It is February 20th, 2026. I'm going to go break my fast here shortly. I've been taping nonstop. I taped about 4 episodes for Future Wise Energy yesterday, 1 for Transcendent, and then I've taped 3 things today. My comedy, and then this Mark's Headroom, as well as an audition for a triathlete, a kind of a senior citizen triathlete. Don't know if I want to get that or not, but we'll see what happens. Wishing you all the best.